So this leads you to ask, what is the purpose? What's the reason for the existence of a political party, a particular political party that contests elections? Is it simply to win seats? Is that your objective? Is it to win whatever the cost, regardless of your party's political platform or its policies? Is it to win by attempting to hide your policies, to somehow, well, say they're there, but we're really not going to talk about them? Or is it to win as a result of articulating and promoting a set of policies and saying, this is what a party stands for and we want you to vote for us because of what we stand for, with the hope, and it may be a vain hope in many cases, that eventually you'll persuade sufficient people to actually vote for you. Now, I think what you see in the case of the Labor Party is a party that was prepared to win, regardless of its policies. Even if it means coming out publicly, consistently asserting that what you stand for, what you're asserting is in direct conflict with that party's policies. And we saw the example, when the power sell-off was on, and we had the parliamentary party saying, of course, we're going to privatise the electricity supply, totally contrary to the parties and the bulk of the membership's decisions and wishes in the matter. But where we saw it particularly with the Labor Party, and here because Marrickville is a seat held by a representative of the Labor left, namely Carmel Tebbit. Carmel Tebbit and a fellow called Luke Foley, who's recently joined the upper house, they are a member of the left grouping within the Labor Party. That grouping met when the BDS became a prominent issue and voted to support the BDS policy. And yet the principal attack upon the Greens came from Luke Foley. He and, of course, from Anthony Albanese, who is Carmel's partner. So it was shown a complete lack of principle, a complete preparedness to sacrifice any thought-out position in order to denigrate your opponents. So, that's to me was an example of winning regardless of costs. The Greens, of course, initially, when the BDS proposal was adopted, it wasn't, no one was thinking of it in, and possibly, foolishly, no one thought about it in the state context of the looming state elections. And I'd be the first to argue that in some ways I wish the resolution had been passed at last week's conference rather than last December's conference. But having adopted the policy without any dissent whatsoever, of course there was a feeling amongst some people, well, look, perhaps we won't talk about it. But of course, as events developed, we had no option but to talk about it. Could be argued perhaps that as soon as we realised that it was going to be such a contentious issue and generate such enormous amounts of hot air and distortion and smears, that we should have been more active at the outset. But anyway, as the campaign progressed, then clearly Fiona and the Greens did try to deal with each of the issues as they were dealt up to her, as they were bowled up to her. But even so, her responses were consistently misrepresented. So you then say, well, was it a failure? Here was an expectation, and I must say it was expectation that was consistently promoted within the mainstream press, rather than an expectation that the Greens initially had, that we thought Marrickville was the seat we were most likely to win. I believe that none of us ever thought that Marrickville was always the seat we were most likely to win. We thought if we did have a good chance it was going to be Balmain, and in fact we were successful in Balmain. But we, I think amongst the Greens, never had that expectation that Marrickville was a certainty, but nevertheless that was the proposition that was put forward and repeated in the press. So, okay, we didn't win. So does that mean that we failed? Well, here I think it's really interesting to go to the Electoral Commission website and just see how people voted. And the comparison is between Balmain and Marrickville because the electorates are fairly similar. You know, lots of professional people, well-educated, great interest in social issues. Leichhardt has had a Greens mayor. Jamie Parker was the mayor for 3 years. Fiona was the mayor since last September. We didn't have a majority on Marrickville Council, but nevertheless there were these rough equivalents, both in-city, inner-west electorates. So the interesting thing is that Jamie Parker, in terms of primary votes, where people had to vote number one, he got 14,019 primary votes. That is 30.7% of primary votes. Fiona in Marrickville got 16,395 votes and almost 35.9, almost 36% of the primary vote. So in fact, in terms of how people, if they want to show their preference for a Green candidate, Fiona did the best of any Greens candidate in any state general election ever in Australia. But of course, this has been described everywhere as a massive electoral defeat for the Greens, a great failure. But on the contrary, I think, and it's confirmed as I talk to people, even tonight I think I was talking to Philip, that what has happened as a result of that election and that media blow-up around it is that the BDS is a vibrant issue within our communities. We've got this meeting tonight. I was at a rally earlier today. It is now an issue in the way it was never in the past. And if it causes people, I don't care what they think about it, whether they support it, they oppose it, whether, they're pro, one or two state solutions in terms of the Middle East. If it causes people to think and consider the issue, then I think that's a major success. But what I also think the lesson to be drawn from this last election is the absolutely critical importance of not being seduced by that conservative argumentation, those conservative assertions that all work on the basis that if you say something long enough, often enough and loud enough, of course it's true. And I think if you do look at the outcome of the election, you could say, no, it's not true. That there are sufficient people in the community who have considered the issues. Now, I don't say for 1 minute they all voted because of the BDS for Fiona, but I do say that that vote for her indicates there is a significant groundswell within the Marrickville community at least for the positions that Fiona and the Greens articulated, and that should not be ignored, nor should we in any way subscribe to the interpretations of that campaign that have been put forward by the Murdoch media, the conservative media and the shock jocks. Thank you.